Hey everyone, today we're looking at licensed characters and how well they were adapted from their source material. I did make a video on this before, but since then we've had a bunch more licensed characters added to the game. I want to specifically review in this video how well each character plays and acts comparatively to the way they do in their respective franchise or license source. To start off, I wanted to look at a unique case. Ghostface is a weird one, because technically the only licensed part is the mask. Therefore, translation-wise, yeah, they nailed the mask. If we consider this more broadly though, and look at how they turned just a mask into a whole character, it's pretty impressive. Part of me considers this as the best adaptation, because ultimately they made one of the most well-loved DBD characters, and did so with the basis of this mask. On the other side, I'm not sure how much to count it for this list specifically. In terms of adapting the source material, again, that's just the mask. It's definitely faithful to that. I'm ranking him therefore both lowest and highest, kind of. Lowest because of the simplicity of the literal translation, but highest in terms of the creation of a fan favorite character from the simplicity of the mask, which stays true to the nature of the mask. I hope that makes sense. I really hate to do it, but starting out here properly, I'm going to say Nemesis. Nemesis is a character I honestly like and enjoy for gameplay, but purely looking at him as a comparison to his Resident Evil self, it doesn't feel accurate at all really. The visuals are there for sure, but the power in particular doesn't feel anything like Nemesis. In RE3, Nemesis is fast, scary, very aggressive, and uses a multitude of different things to try and catch Jill. In DBD, he has a funny run and tries to slap you with his little tentacle. It's a character that is undoubtedly hard to translate over, but when I play him in DBD, I don't feel like Nemesis. I look and I sound like him, those things definitely spot on, but the actual gameplay, both to play and face, just doesn't quite recreate him in my opinion. I do like how the zombies add to Nemesis, and I do think he has a bunch of great aspects, and by no means do I think it's a bad translation of the character, just the weakest in my opinion. Freddy is next, and the more I consider him as a character, I do think they transferred him over pretty well. I do think his current power is less accurate than his old one, but I still think he's pretty decent. He looks pretty spot on. He's got some creepy sounds and kind of semi-voice lines almost, like little chuckles and whatnot. There's also of course the lullaby, which is a really great addition. The way the dream world functions was a reasonable compromise to make him work, and things like the clocks and such work well. There's also lots of cool little details like adrenaline waking you up, failing skill checks. I like stuff like that. The add-ons are actually very interesting too, and there's lots of references. However much you like or dislike the source material, I do think they did a pretty good job transferring Freddy over. Leatherface is a tough case because he's kind of very simple at his core. Maybe the simplest character to transfer from his license. He's a guy and he's got a chainsaw, and so when his power is guy with chainsaw, it's like, yeah, that's about right. My ranking here therefore is more to do with him being simplistic. I do think he was transferred over well and does feel like Bubba, particularly with things like the tantrum mechanic, but also the wide sweeping of the chainsaw and things like the animations. My main gripe was the lack of original add-ons for him when he came out, but nowadays he has ones that represent him well, and with some cool references in them too. Bubba's a simple character, but he was recreated well. Demogorgon for me is an odd one because I actually think playing as Demo feels very close to the character, but the visuals and some of the animations don't feel as good, I guess. Some can kind of look a bit goofy in my opinion with the way it walks and moves, but that's kind of required due to how the game functions. The shred attack I thought was a brilliant way to implement Demo's speed and really amplify that supernatural aspect. I guess the main issue for me with Demo is the movement and it feeling too humanized almost, but that's kind of a consequence too of it needing to hook people and whatnot. I do think now seeing the possibility to have under the map tunnels like with Alien, it does feel somewhat disappointing that Demo didn't get the same treatment. Then again, maybe it wasn't possible back then. A fully rendered upside down beneath the main map would probably absolutely ruin frame rate and such too. Overall, Demo was done very very well. Pig, I think, was transferred over pretty well, all things considered. The choice of power was really great, I think. The ambush in particular, I think, is a really well done ability, where they took a scene from the first film and basically turned it into the ambush attack, even including the growl sound effect. Although kind of goofy, it does surprisingly work well, I think, and does add to the feeling of it being Saw. The reverse bear traps and jigsaw boxes are also a reasonable way to introduce a jigsaw trial type of power. There was definitely compromise here, but I think considering the restrictions they needed to put on something like this, it did come out well, even if it does tone down the Sawness of it. Pig visually looks great, and things like the add-ons seem very well researched and stuff. The main thing that feels a little off is maybe the lack of grittiness, I suppose I would call it. Pyramid Head is a character where a lot of compromises were made for his power. He functions pretty differently to his Silent Hill version, and his whole presence and purpose of being in the realm is pretty odd to begin with, but they made him work. His ability to create trails and his ground-splitting ranged attack feel fitting for him, and appropriate for his character. Pyramid Head has an incredible presence within the trial. I might be going a little far here and annoying people, but I kind of think he feels more menacing in DBD. He is definitely a case of being one of the most adjusted characters, but I don't think it hurts him in this case, like with Nemesis say. He still feels dangerous and mysterious and unstoppable. I think he benefits from being a physically and visually slower character compared to someone like Nemesis. Myers has dropped a bit for me, but for sure is still transferred incredibly well. His stalking power nowadays doesn't work the best for gameplay, but it does definitely feel fitting to the character. The sounds he does make, although few, all add to his overall presence. Myers does look different from how he does in the first film, being much bulkier and having a more fitting jumpsuit, but I've always kind of liked that. I honestly prefer the visual representation of him in DBD more than the original film. Looking into things like add-ons too, they really nailed everything, tying most of his potential emotion to his sister Judith. Really solid representation of the character. Sadako, I think, is a little better than Myers. When looking at what Sadako's power could be, it's impressive they managed to come up with something so appropriate. The condemned mechanic and filling of the 7 representative bars works well for her. She has unique visuals, weapon types, and has a whole array of different cool animations and elements, like her lobby jump scares. She has unique static sounds, doesn't breathe, just small things like that that really put her together and represent her well. There's a lot of mystery with her character, and I think they really kept that intact with DBD's version. Her psychic powers are implemented and aren't just abandoned in favor of convenience, and she has many alterations to help her out and make her fit well. Wesker is one of my top picks, to be honest, for well-translated characters. He looks spot on visually, and his sounds and voice lines are all really great too. Wesker's power, despite being somewhat awkward to put in, is done well. In the games he can move incredibly quickly and is enhanced by Ouroboros. I think the creation of the tendril and the ability to bound was a good way to implement these things, without ruining the logic or feeling of them. Pretty much the only thing I don't like about this power is that the first aid sprays get rid of the Ouroboros infection. Wesker looks great, and I think he was transferred over very well. He feels menacing, but also equally goofy like his Resident Evil 5 self. Really spot on, I think. Alien is a character that required a lot of alterations to make it work well, but I do think it has been transferred over very well. It has particularly impressive elements to its power, like the tunnels beneath the map, and how it crawls on all fours. It has lots of new and unique things about how it moves and looks, and these things really do add to the character's feel and representation in the game. Even the way it chooses to hold survivors when carrying them feels more natural to Alien. They went all out to make it work for the character, rather than altering the character to fit more into DBD. It feels like a perfect in-between. Pretty much my only dislike is that Xeno feels a little slow comparatively to the films, but that's simply just a gameplay thing, and it really doesn't take away much in gameplay. Pinhead might be a bit of a hot take, but I think he's probably the most well done license in terms of transferring over the character. From the visuals to the voice lines and the sounds, the animations, the power, it all feels right for Pinhead, I think. It's an impressive feat too, considering that he's not your typical slasher. Like many of the DBD characters, characters are closer to. The compromises made for gameplay I find don't take away from anything really, and he still feels wholly intact and like his presented Hellraiser self. For a license upon initially hearing was coming to the game and not knowing about it prior or caring particularly, after seeing the films and how he's evolved over time in DBD, I think he's the character they transferred over the best. Alright, well that's gonna do it. Who's the best adapted in your opinion? Let me know down below. Thanks, and goodbye.